Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fraud Fighters Virtual Summit. Today, we're going to be covering chop stopping pig butchering scams. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. I'm Russ Warnoff, Marketing Director here at Unit 21. First, this is being recorded and will be available more or less immediately right after the session. And second, unfortunately, because we have a fairly quick session here, we won't have dedicated Q&A at the end, but I certainly encourage everyone to submit questions into the Q&A box as we go along, and we'll do our best to answer them sort of on the fly throughout the conversation. With that, I am super excited for the panel that we've put together and the caliber of speakers and the diversity of opinions here. Let's start with some quick intros. Erin, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Erin West. I'm a Deputy District Attorney in Santa Clara County, California, and I work with the REACT Task Force. It's a high-tech group of local detectives, and we work on crimes involving cryptocurrency and high tech.
Wonderful. Thanks, Erin. Matthew, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Matt Hogan. I'm a detective with the Connecticut State Police and a task force officer with the Secret Service out of New Haven.
Thanks, Matt. Good to have you. And Christina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Ray. I'm the founder and CEO of Raycore Consulting. I've worked in compliance for almost 15 years now. I'm the former CCO of Binance US and former BSA officer of Uphold.com. And I continue to work in AML, KYC, and fraud every day as a fractional CCO and also as an expert witness.
Great. Thanks, Christina. And last but not least, my esteemed colleague, Alex.
Thanks, Ross. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Vajvosovich. I'm the head of fraud risk here at Unit 21. I'm a fraud prevention practitioner for the past 15 years. Started with traditional banking, did a lot of consulting, eventually transitioned to fintech. And today I head everything that is fraud related with Unit 21. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Alex to run the show. Alex, take it away.
Thank you so much. So I'm happy everyone can join. And for those of you who are watching me for the fourth time today, you have a special place in my heart. We have a great panel here to discuss a very important subject, which is pig butchering. For those of you who might not know what pig butchering is, so let's start with the dry definition of it, and then we will dig deeper into the subject. So basically, pig butchering is a scam that is based on a long-term relationship where the scammers spend weeks, sometimes months, cultivating trust with their victims before they're defrauding them, usually via cryptocurrency, but it's not limited to crypto. So moving forward, we will assume that everybody have the basic understanding of what pig butchering is, and we will discuss that in great depth. So in order to fully understand the magnitude of those scams and what is important to know, let's kick off with Erin. I know that you've been focusing a lot on pig butchering for the past few years. What can you tell us about this? How do you feel pig butchering is evolving in the recent years?
What we've seen over the past 2 years is a massive, massive number of victims in the United States and worldwide who have gotten hit with this scam. And what the numbers show from FBI and that are largely corroborated by investigators in the field and people who are studying this movement of money is that it's billions and billions and billions of dollars. FBI provided us with intel that $5 billion worth of complaints were brought to them from just 2023. So it's a massive movement of money. But more than that, it's affecting a huge number of people. It's tens of thousands of victims in the United States and other countries that are being hit with the financial scam. But in Southeast Asia, where this began, what we're seeing are huge compounds developing, infrastructure, and we're seeing a very rapid development process where what once was just plain land, dirt fields 3 years ago is now been developed into massive compounds where hundreds of thousands of people are held in essentially modern day slavery, forced to do this dirty work. So what we're looking at is more than just fraud. What we're looking at is a worldwide crisis in terms of the amount and scale of money movement and the amount and scale of victims being hit on both sides of this problem.
Thank you so much, Erin. And thank you for pointing out the human trafficking part of pig butchering. I think that for many professionals in the financial industry, they usually focus on the actual financial scam, but the human trafficking aspect of it is huge, and it's impacting hundreds of thousands of people. And like with any fraud prevention, fraud-related statistics, I say, we share the numbers that are being recorded. Imagine what is not being recorded, and how many people fall victims to those scams and never say nothing about it just because they feel ashamed, or they don't even know to who they should report those types of scams, and how big is the impact, we'll probably never know. Matt, I know that you have a lot of hands-on experience. What would you share your perspective on pig butchering?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working pretty closely with Erin now for a better part of 2.5, 3 years now, and I think with the coalition that she's developed and the membership we have, we're seeing the same thing across the country. And it's that it's not just one victim. These are all interrelated victims. When we do cryptocurrency tracing and we're trying to follow flows of money, they're ending up in the same commingled wallets and all winding up in very similar exchanges overseas. And likely belonging to the same entities. So I think people are neglecting the fact that it's not just a single person, but more of a large-scale transnational crime, like Erin's talking about, like actual a hierarchical structure of a business operation, and that there's more than just there's a C-suite of bad guys involved. There's a group of money launderers involved. There's people who are tasked with creating the websites and domains, and these are all human trafficking victims likely as well, like she mentioned. So I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for a lot of these things. It's not just some rinky-dink little one-person fraud shop that's operating anymore. It's very much it's very sophisticated.
Is this something you're seeing today when you conduct your investigation, that quite often you will find that the person who conducting the fraud will, the insights that you find during the investigation will lead to the same lead somewhere in South Asia?
They go to a lot of the same exchanges that are pretty consistent across the board, and the intermediate wallets that receive the funds before they split them off and try and do all kinds of other commingling and obfuscation. They all at some point or another connect to other wallets that have similar activity or connections. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Christina, you are the responsible compliance person in the room. I would love to hear your perspective on that subject.
Thank you. Yeah, I as a compliance professional, what I really hope people take away is just the importance of involving yourself in continuing education around scams and fraud of all kinds. Pig butchering is, especially heartbreaking when you hear the depths to which, the criminal machinations go. I didn't even know until a month ago myself when I first heard Erin speak on the topic. This isn't just, vulnerable people getting text messages saying, oh, I'd love to be friends. I mean, the web of criminal activity going on, Matt and Erin are talking about, kidnapping and human trafficking. And it is just, the amount of criminal activity going on in these scams is crazy. And, as a compliance person, it's so important to be up, on the latest when it comes to fraud. And it really makes our job that much more important, ensuring that our compliance programs, are buttoned up. We've all seen the consent orders in the news about various crypto exchanges and financial institutions not having, compliance programs be up to snuff where they should be in terms of KYC, ongoing monitoring, everything that goes into KYC, not just onboarding, but EDD, transaction monitoring. I know we'll get into some more of this stuff later, but, if we're going to do our part to help, and I know, Erin and Matt talk about this being, all hands on deck, we really need to make sure that we understand kind of what's going on, understand what's going on behind the scenes. It's not just, silly text messages that, we think people should ignore. There's a lot of psychology that goes on into this. And even just from a little bit of reading that I've done, trying to educate myself about the topic more, I've found that, the scammers are now selling pig butchering kits on the dark web, pretty much. I've seen one term, be labeled DeFi savings scams. And, it's basically a DIY kit for how to, engage in pig butchering and scam people on your own. So, to the best of our ability internally, in the compliance department, we really need to make sure we know who our customers are, we understand what the fraud schemes are, and we do our absolute best to monitor, on-chain transactions and fiat transactions as well.
Thank you, Christina. And that's very interesting. You mentioned those kits being sold on the dark web. And I think that even adds more to the mix, because outside of dealing with organized crime that, operating pig butchering scams, we have now citizens who maybe 5-6 years ago didn't have access to those kits because they used to need to log into the dark web. They need to download the Tor. They need to understand what the onion is, log into East European forum and be credible in order to get this information. Now all you need as a regular person is just to download Telegram, join the chat group, and you can get access to those illicit goods. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Now with pig butchering, there's a lot of different faces and flavors, but I think they all follow a very similar formula. Matt, I would like you to maybe lay out the blueprint of how pig butchering is conducted financial-wise.
Yeah, so beyond the point of contact, whereas either SMS or some kind of group message from Facebook or something like that, you're going to wind up getting sent to an exchange and purchasing crypto on the U.S. side from an exchange using fiat. So once that money is introduced into the U.S. exchange, they're going to have the victim attach that money to a DeFi wallet, typically like a crypto.com DeFi wallet. And from that point forward, they're going to be interchangeably operating on a scam platform that looks and functions like an actual trading platform. But that domain is actually controlled by these organized crime groups. So any kind of market fluctuations they're observing are going to be accurate to the point where you'll see Bitcoin dollar amounts moving correctly, but they're going to see the profit inflation going up and going, and that's when they get excited and they see that their $20,000 is now $1 million, and that's where they get the idea to invest more because they've now seen this large scale investment really work out for them, and then they'll trick them into allowing them to sometimes withdraw profits, if you will. And that kind of ropes them in for more, right? Now they've deemed that the website's safe and accurate because they've been able to pull funds off. So now they're going to just dump everything into this platform and seeing that their profits are going crazy. And that's when you see people taking HELOCs out on their houses, emptying credit cards, taking loans out, borrowing money from friends and family, which is where it gets really bad. And then at that point, you're talking months into these scams. And from that point, that's when they start interacting. I want to get my profits out. And when they can't get their profits out, they're told two things. You either have to pay taxes on your investment or you haven't met the minimum dollar threshold amount. So then they'll reinvest more money or borrow more money from someone else to, hopefully get their money back, which never happens. And in that entire frame of time, that money's been moving across the blockchain for months. So they're obfuscating it, using tumblers and everything else, trying to get the money to be obfuscated as best they can. So.
Thank you so much for that insight, and I couldn't agree more. I'm coming a bit loaded to that subject because when I look at things from a banking operational perspective, I still see quite many banks who try to tackle this problem on a transaction level monitoring, and our transaction monitoring system by design are meant to detect a transaction that wasn't made by the customer, and this is not the use case. And I think many banks and financial institutions fail to understand that this is a long game and you must see your customer as an asset because the fraudsters see them as an asset. And when you understand that this asset, whatever it's worth, $500,000, $1 million, is being drained, and you need to understand how it's being drained and how fast it's being drained and how it is not what the customer usually does on their day-to-day basics. This is where banks should focus. You cannot stop pig butchering scam on the first transaction whenever it happens, but you can definitely stop it right when it begins to scale to a point where you understand this customer is losing all its money, all its life savings. So thank you so much for that. Erin, I would like to hear you weigh on this.
Yeah, I think what's interesting from a banking perspective is how this money is moving. I got a call over the weekend from a friend who reached out and said, my 84-year-old mom walked into a big bank and told them that she needed to withdraw $100,000. And she was in the middle of a pig butchering event and nobody knew about it. But she goes into her bank and she asks them to help her. And she's already been coached with a whole story. So I think that's something that banks want to know about is I think that from the ground floor, what's helpful for them to know is what their customers are going to look like when they come in. And they are going to come in with kind of a preposterous story. This story was that this 84-year-old woman wanted to wire her money to a Thai bank because she was buying real estate in Thailand, which to me is preposterous and should not get by any big bank. But in fact, it did. And they let this old woman, this woman of advanced age, wire her $100,000 to Thailand. And it wasn't until the next day when she came in to send another $50,000 that somebody thought to check the trusted person on her bank account and reach out to him. And he said, oh my God, no, my mom shouldn't be doing that. And that stopped it. So I think what's really important from looking at this from a bank or FI perspective is knowing what people are going to look like when they come in and and knowing that they will have been coached to come up with these stories. And frequently the story is that they are doing remodeling. But this woman with this real estate story, like I'm surprised that got by this big bank.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for that. And I really love the fact that you mentioned the trusted person. We encourage everybody, people, if you have parents who are, already retired and they doing their thing and enjoying life, please add yourself as a trusted person on the account. Make sure that whenever the financial institution have a red flag, they will reach out to you. Chances are you can save, the life investments and life savings of your parents. So this is a great point. Christina, would you like to weigh in on this subject?
Yeah, I think everyone's brought up absolutely amazing points. Alex, I know you'll probably get into some, transaction monitoring red flags in a minute. But, but to Aaron's point, why is this getting through? When I'm thinking through this as it is now, people being asked to wire money to Thailand or Southeast Asia that maybe have no connections, inevitably at some point, this is going to get more advanced and people are going to be wiring money to Western Europe or somewhere in the United States. Like the scammers are only going to get more advanced. So learning these typologies and really buttoning up compliance is so important now. It used to be all the guidance around, anti-money laundering for banks is making sure that you are updating your programs at least once a year. We don't have the luxury to really do that anymore. Anyone that's heard me speak knows that I will talk until I'm blue in the face about the risk-based approach, which is based on guidance from the Financial Action Task Force. But FinCEN is now, I think, trying to maybe codify it in some guidance. They've started asking for comments about the risk-based approach, because we can't just rely on, the old standard guidance with the BSA and the Patriot Act. We need to be bringing compliance into the here and now. And we need to be doing things every single day to make sure that we're protecting customers. I was on a case earlier this year. I was the expert witness, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. The plaintiff was a guy, he had modest means. He was a teacher. He didn't have a huge salary. He had a little bit of savings. He was the victim of a pig butchering scam. The little bit of savings he did have went to, this criminal enterprise. He went to friends and family. I forget if he mortgaged his house or took out a loan, but he ended up sending $1 million that he did not have and had no way of recovering. And he brought it to a law firm. The law firm was doing their best. They said there must be, some remediation for this guy. And the defense was, the BSA only protects financial institutions, which is unfortunately true. The BSA was designed to ensure that a financial institution isn't the victim of money laundering, not that their customer, who is the victim of fraud or money laundering, gets reimbursed. And back to your point, Alex, about your customers being assets, it can't at that point in time be a matter of how do we weasel our way out of liability. It's what do we need to be doing at the outset to make sure that this doesn't even happen. I mentioned before, really buttoning up KYC. If an older person is going into a bank and taking out 100,000 to send to Thailand, that should be an immediate red flag. There's all sorts of red flags around KYC and the transactions themselves. And I know you'll get into that in a second, Alex, but yeah, this is incredibly important, because if your reputation is such that, you know, you don't really care about your customers, and this is splashed all over the news constantly. We're constantly seeing crypto exchanges and payment companies and fintechs in the news for letting this stuff happen, then you really don't have a business at the end of the day.
Also, I was going to say to you, Christina, because are fintechs even really protected under AML? Because I feel like the biggest thing we're seeing is these on-ramps, right? Or these off-ramps. So like MoonPays and the Mercurios and all these other companies that are used to onboard people for crypto. So if you want to use a credit card or a debit card to purchase crypto, that's where a lot of these people are doing it, because it's the easiest mechanism besides, you know, Coinbase or another exchange. So
yeah, exactly. And there's so much, you know, around, you know, DeFi and privacy, and we don't want to give too much KYC information. And sure, that's understandable. But on the flip side, when something like this happens, you know, then these mechanisms aren't in place to protect you and to, you know, try to recover your assets. So you really got to think about that.
I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for that. And on the transaction monitoring, or let's call it the prevention side of things, I think what's important here is, if you're operating today and your system's only looking at the transactions that the customer taken, there's almost no chance for you to detect that type of scam and that type of magnitude. The key to success here is to understand the full profile of the user, understand who that person is, how they access their bank account, when they access their bank account, what actions they usually take. If a person suddenly starts to download all the statements from his savings account, that's a red flag, right? If a person initiates a link between his account and a third-party crypto exchange, that is a red flag. So there's many different non-transactional insights that you can collect from the journey of the user within your website or on your banking app that can indicate a potentially beginning of a scam. And when you combine that with the outbound activity of large amounts, this is your red flag. This is where things really have to stop. You call the user, you call their trusted person, whatever who that might be, and understand what is going on. Why do we see those red flags? Why money starts to move out of the account? And that's really the key to success. You cannot focus on the transaction level. You have to understand your customer life cycle, how they interact with you, what they're doing on the regular basis with their account, and find the anomalies there. So let's move to the next part of this conversation. So we understand. I think we got better understanding of what pig butchering is and how it takes place. But Erin, I really want to understand from your perspective, as fraud fighters, as people who work in the financial industry, how do we create more awareness? What should we do better?
We've got a major problem on our hands. And when we have a problem this big, we need to join forces. And so I'm really proud to say that I work directly with Matt Hogan on two of these endeavors where we are joining forces. And one of them is our Crypto Coalition, which is our group of law enforcement only that works to understand how to be helpful to the victim on the ground level and how to share information about how to do this type of work. But the bigger picture requires a much bigger response. And that's why we created Operation Shamrock. Operation Shamrock is the first cross-industry information sharing group dedicated to transnational organized crime. And in that group, we've looked at the entire life cycle of pig butchering, from when the victims are meeting their scammers on social media, to banking, financial institutions, to cryptocurrency exchanges, law enforcement at every level, our diplomacy and our State Department activities, as well as NGOs on the ground in Southeast Asia, and victims. And what we did is we brought everyone together to look at how we can share information to better attack this problem as a unit. And what you've said, Alex, is exactly what we need to be doing. And that's why events like this are so important. is we've got to be sharing information among ourselves. And then once we learn this information, we've got to be sharing it with friends and family, that there are technical things that we can learn in the banking, FI, law enforcement industry, but then there are just human to human stories that we need to tell everyone we know about the latest scam out there and the latest way they're trying to take our money. So that's what we stand for at Operation Shamrock. And we are, we're really seeing a really hopeful group of people that are willing to look at the problems that exist and how we can make positive change to make our world safer.
I absolutely agree. This is music to my ears. I always say that in the financial industry, we spent the last decade understanding how to verify someone's identity online. The KYC boom is over. It's behind us. This industry came a long way, and we have amazing products and tools for KYC today. The next 10 years, we're going to spend in the consortium boom, understand how we take global network sharing to the next level, making sure that we keep the identity of our customers safe, but also sharing the right information in a timely manner with other financial institutions, and even on the government level, to make sure that when fraud is happening on a scale and it's impacting several people at several financial institutions, we have a great visibility to what's going on. Matt, would you like to share your perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, I share obviously Erin's point of view on this whole thing because I wouldn't have been involved otherwise. I just think we've recognized very early on that this is not just a local and state and federal issue, right? This is going across overseas now, where we a lot of times don't have jurisdiction. So we've had to really look at this holistically and see how can we affect change using every single piece of weaponry in our arsenal, right? So we can't just do this as law enforcement. We can't just do this as prosecutors or whatever. We need connection to industry, crypto exchanges, banking. We need people who can handle dealing with victim advocacy, because that's a huge part of this. So looking at this thing holistically and seeing how we can really affect change at the larger scale, recognizing now how big the problem is and how big the organized crime group is that we're dealing with and how well funded they are. That's what our biggest challenge really is.
I absolutely agree. Christina, would you like to share your perspective on how compliance should evolve in that space?
Mm-hmm. I agree with everything Matt and Erin are saying, about consortiums and coalitions. I think, I've had Homeland Security reach out to me asking questions, saying, please talk to us. We'd love to work together because we're on the ground seeing this stuff and we'd like to figure out what's going on at crypto exchanges to make sure we prevent this before it happens. And to that point, I think more advanced and consistent training within, fintechs and crypto exchanges and financial institutions is absolutely critical. To my point earlier, it can't just be once a year anymore, because that's what the statute says. It has to be ongoing. People have to be educated on this so then they can educate others, what's happening in terms of pig butchering. And then whatever's coming next after pig butchering, that's only going to be more advanced, anything with AI, anything with spoofing, things that I couldn't imagine beyond knowing something, awful is around the corner, because scammers are organized and they're a well-oiled machine. So we have to work together. I know that I'm not sure what it's called. I know there's a coalition amongst some of the crypto exchanges specifically for pig butchering. They discuss best practices and threat intelligence, other tips and things like that. But, constantly having these discussions, attending conferences, workshops, getting certifications around fraud. This is all really critical to combating this, and then the more advanced scams that are coming after this.
Thank you, Christina. I read a statistic recently that said there is a rise of 400% in phishing attacks, just to the fact that it's much easier to execute with AI tools and create a very sophisticated phishing email. So it's definitely not going to stop, and it won't slow down unless we will be proactive about this as an industry. So thank you so much for all of your insights. I think it was a great discussion. And Ross, I will give the mic back to you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. That was incredibly insightful. I learned a ton. I really hope folks on the line also found it as interesting as I did, and were able to pull out a few tactics that could be useful, not only in your profession and your organization, but also for your friends and family as well. I think, there are things that you can do in your line of work, but it's also just a general awareness, especially for folks in your family, maybe older folks who are not thinking about this as often as those who are in our kind of line of work. So thank you again, speakers, Matt, Alex, Christina, Aaron, for coming together and sharing your thoughts. Moving forward, we're going to be jumping straight into our closing keynote. And so excited that we're going to be chatting with Mariana Van Zeller, the famous investigative journalist and TV host. That's one you certainly won't want to miss. So make sure to stick around for that one. And then if you want to learn a little bit more about fraud prevention, we've got a great demo where Alex actually himself will show how Unit 21 helps organizations of all shapes and sizes prevent fraud. And that's available all day in our demo showcase area. And last but not least, we have a really cool project that we're working on. It's our State of Fraud and AML report. This is the third time we're doing this report. And it's where we bring together insights from folks who are on the front lines, trends and various elements of fraud and AML compliance that they're seeing at their organization. And so this is my official request and call for all of us to please take a few minutes, fill out this survey. All of this gets compiled and put together to kind of represent what everyone's seeing in the space in terms of various fraud vectors, volumes of fraud. And so if you wouldn't mind taking out your phone, scanning that QR code, it really only takes a few minutes, and then your insights are incredibly helpful for everyone in the broader fraud fighting and AML compliance community. So with that, thanks again to our wonderful speakers today. Couldn't do this without you, and hope everyone enjoys the closing keynote. Thanks, folks.